All right, let's talk about Nigeria, because Nigeria has flared up in in news recently. But I know there's ongoing conflict, right, between Christians primarily in the south, Muslims primarily in the north. Is this another flare up among many flare ups that have happened, or is this particularly devastating for the church, or is it hard to tell?
It is a continuation of what we've seen over the last 20 years. And we see these biggest attacks, sometimes hundreds of people killed. The news media often presents it as sort of violence between tribal groups or violence between shepherds and farmers, and they want the land to graze their cattle, and the farmers want the land to grow crops. And that's what this fighting is about. But when you go into some of these villages after an attack and you're like, okay, well, that house is still standing. Oh yeah, that house belonged to a Muslim. That house was burned down to the ground. Oh, yep, that was a Christian house. And you start walking through these villages and see, well, all the Christian homes were burned down and all the Muslim homes are still standing. Well, that's not about cattle grazing versus farming.
Right.
That's about, these are the Christian homes that have all been burned down. That is a attack on the Christians. And so Nigeria is a fascinating place because in the South, you have predominantly Christian population, and you literally have mega churches that are operating. Yeah. They'll be meeting together this Sunday. There'll be thousands of Christians gathering. They will have, a high production value service. They'll have a great sermon, and they'll all go home safely. In the North, you have predominantly Muslims, and you have churches there that are smaller and are under fire. Their pastors are threatened. Sometimes they're kidnapped. Sometimes they're killed. That's where you see the violence. But it's the same country, but it's totally different to be a Christian in the South from being a Christian in the North.
Do the Christians in the South, are they helping the Christians in the North? Like, is there a lot of inner church help happening? Because I don't know, like we often have the kind of white savior, like we need to go over there and rescue it, whatever, not realizing there's millions of Christians in Nigeria already, right? So do they need like outside help? Are they doing it, or
there is some involvement from the church in the South. I would say there is not enough involvement. And they do still need help. The Christians in the North certainly do still need help. But one of the things that we hope is happening, and I think it is starting to happen, is the church in the South to have really the same response that we here in America have. Wait a minute, those are my brothers and sisters. Well, how can I help them? What can I do? And so that is happening, but I would love to see it happen more.
And where's the government in all this? Is it a Christian government? I mean, not Christian government, but there's Christians in the government, right? I mean,
there are Christians in the government, and previously they used to alternate the prime minister from Christian, Muslim. Okay. So they would kind of alternate back and forth. I think they have gotten away from that sort of trading off. I believe the last 3 prime ministers have been Muslims. I'm not 100% sure of that, but the government of Nigeria says all the right things. Man, we really want to get a handle on this. We really want to put down these terrorists. We've got to stop this kind of violence and attacks. Every Nigerian should have the freedom to worship as they see fit. And then there's another attack. And then there's another attack. And you're like, okay, do you really want to put a stop to it? Is it that you're not capable of stopping it, or is it that you're not committed to stopping it? And that's a hard question to answer. Well, one of the reasons Nigeria has been in the news is because President Trump declared that it was a country of particular concern on the issue of religious freedom. And that opens up a whole toolbox for the U.S. government, for the State Department to use both carrots and sticks to try to improve religious freedom in a given country that we've identified that way. One of the big questions about Nigeria is, okay, because most of the attacks are terrorists, it's Boko Haram, it is ISIS West Africa province, it is Islamists from among the Fulani tribal people. It is typically not the government. It's not the army. It's not the police that are committing these atrocities. So how is that going to work? How are we going to use that sort of political process to advance the idea of religious freedom, to advance safety for Christians in the North? That's a question that I think they're still trying to figure out, well, what is the answer to that? Because like I say, it's typically not the government that's doing persecution,
Right.
but it's also not the government that is protecting Christians in the North.
Are they scared of, are the terrorist groups so big and powerful and influential that the government's like a little bit like doesn't have the manpower to go in and
the intestinal fortitude? There is some of that. I think in some cases they are outgunned by the terrorists. There are also cases where the military are Muslims and they're kind of sympathetic to the terrorists. And so we have heard stories where men in military uniforms committed attacks. We've heard of stories where men in military uniforms stood aside and didn't intervene when an attack was happening. And so it's hard to say, is that a small group among the military? Is that sort of widespread? But it seems clear that the Nigerian government and the military haven't done enough to protect Christians in the North. And like I say, I don't know if that is a matter of ability or if that is a matter of commitment, but they haven't done enough.